Welcome to the Stream of Art podcast. Join me, Robyn.
And me, Michelle, as we chat openly about personal growth, creativity, and building a career in the arts. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the 11th episode of the Stream of Art podcast. This is going to be part 2 of our conversation on finding your artistic voice. But first, we're going to do our check-in. Yeah, and see how each of our weeks have gone. So, Robyn, how did your week go?
My week was good. It was uneventful. It was much the same as the week before. I kept daily painting. I had a couple commissions come through, so I was
nice.
Yeah, I started working on those, which it's always a little bit intimidating because I always feel scared that I've forgotten how to paint.
Okay.
So yeah, I have to kind of push myself. And the other thing that's happening too is I've gotten it to a point. I'm happy with it so far, but I'm scared. I'm scared to ruin it. So that's another thing that's, yeah. Oh
my God, I didn't even think about that, but that's so true when you're painting.
Yeah.
It's so much harder to come back from a mistake, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's with acrylic painting, it's not, because you can just kind of rework it. I have to keep telling myself that. And I'm not usually stumped like this, but right now I have this like fear, and I think it's just because I'm out of practice with representational painting.
Okay.
And because I know it's for someone and I have a bit of a time crunch, like there's this pressure, like I want it to go smoothly, but ultimately if it doesn't, it's not a big deal. I can either gesso over it if I needed to, which I rarely does it go so sideways that you need to do that.
Okay.
Or I buy a new canvas if that's the other thing I have to do, but I have to just keep self-talk. Like it's not a big deal. I have to force myself to do it. And I think once I get through these and prove to myself, yes, I can paint, I think it'll be easier. But in the meantime, there's a bit of a hurdle, like a psychological hurdle that I have to get over. And other than that, so I discovered a painting challenge, not painting necessarily, but it's like a creative challenge called the 100-Day Project. I think that's what it is. And the idea is that for every day you do something creative, like you work on some sort of creative project. And for some people, that means like they do like a little sketch every day or a little painting every day, which is kind of what I've been doing since January. But I've decided that I want to, because I've been feeling the itch to get back into the kind of representational stuff for the past couple of months. So I've decided that over the next 100 days, and this might be too ambitious, like this might be where I'm doing the classic Robyn thing where I overcommit and don't follow through, but we'll see. I've decided that over the next 100 days, I'm going to do 25 little 4x4 landscapes. So
nice.
I've gone through my photos. I've selected some photos that I'm going to try painting. I've cropped them so that they're the square format. And I'm going to try to do that. And I'm going to post on social media. So if anyone's curious, robynlester.art on Instagram. My plan is to update daily, but we'll see if that actually happens. I might just update every 3 days when I've completed a painting. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. That's basically it.
I feel like that sounds ambitious, but I feel like it's within the realm of something you can accomplish. Like it's not too ambitious. I think because you've been so consistent with your daily paintings, I feel like that should be a good enough sign that you'll be able to stick with this too.
Yeah, I do want to continue. So like I want to finish, because I set a goal for February to do a little painting every day as well, right? And it's been abstract stuff primarily that I've been doing, and like some kind of impressionistic landscapes too, but mainly abstract. And I want to continue that. So I'll be doing kind of both for the rest of the month, which I think will be okay. I am fearful that because I already feel scared, like I'm already feeling nervous about this. But I think it's a sign that I should do it. And I have been showing up consistently. You're right. Like I have been showing up consistently for painting. So it's doing that, but tackling something that is a little bit scary to me. It feels right. But because I'm in this process right now of building trust in myself, I think part of the fear is like, how about if I start and I realize it's too ambitious and I stop, and then I'm back to feeling like, oh, I can't trust myself to follow through on things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
I feel like you can do it. And I think too, as far as building trust, an important element of building that trust in yourself is in being able to bounce back when you do fall short of something that you're trying to accomplish. Because sometimes
That's true.
We do set ourselves up for something that you're just unable to accomplish for whatever reason, and we immediately just deem it this failure, and then we use that as evidence of how incapable we are of actually, doing whatever the thing is. Seeing something through is often that's an issue. But if you can look at the bigger picture and go, well, I tried and it didn't work. What is it that didn't work out? And then you can make adjustments. So it's the idea of looking at failure not as this horrible thing, but as like an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to improve. So, the fact that you are trying something should build up some trust in yourself that you're the kind of person who is willing to take on a challenge and take on something that does feel scary. Like, I think if you didn't trust yourself, you wouldn't even bother. But if you're trying, I think there's some at least latent trust in there. And then you can just reframe if you stumble, and look for the opportunities to just adjust how you're approaching something, and look for like roadblocks too, because that's like a long-term thing. If you're struggling with a particular project, especially like a creative project, what it might reveal to you are roadblocks to your creative process. And it could be something like how you're feeling that day, or it could be something external that if you got it sorted, it just wouldn't be an issue anymore. But until you have the experience of, again, quote unquote, failing, not really failing, but maybe not meeting the deadline or whatever it is, you maybe wouldn't have realized that if that hadn't have happened. And now you have this information that is very valuable if you take action on it and you make an adjustment. So I think, again, it's going to come down to being able to look at the bigger picture and, just making it so that you do feel more comfortable. Taking a risk is too strong of a phrase, but of doing things that are a little bit scary and a little bit uncomfortable, because there's nothing to fear. If something goes wrong and you don't finish, that's not a huge deal. I failed failed again, quote unquote, failed my first RPM challenge, but it didn't stop me from doing the one the next year. I just knew that, it's just not the right time. And now I've done it every year since 2021. But, if I had let that keep me from trying, because I'm like, I just never finish anything, it would have been like a huge waste. So I think as long as you have that kind of mindset, you should be fine. Although, again, I feel confident that you'll see it through to the end.
Yeah, and I guess, I have been showing up to paint every day since January, and that's felt really quite easy, although I'm not working right now. So maybe just readjusting the objective here, where it's like, yes, I want to, by the end of the 100-day period, I want to have created 25 small paintings, but primary objective, show up every day and try.
Absolutely.
And as long as I do that, I can check that box, so maybe that's the way of it, like shift the priority from the actual outcome to the process, which you're all about.
I am 100% about the process, definitely. Yeah, and I think it's fine to still have this specific outcome you want, because it does put some boundaries around what you're doing, and it does add a certain sense of urgency that I've talked about before with something like RPM, where the pressure of needing to be finished, or some degree of finished, by the end of February means it's pulling something out of me that I don't see often when I am working at a slower pace, which is how I tend to work. I'm very much, as we were talking about before we started recording, I am very much a disciple of Cal Newport and his slow productivity mindset. So I work on things slowly and steadily. So to have that sort of urgency and to have that clear goal, that clear deadline, definitely does push me beyond my usual limits. But if I ever didn't meet the deadline, it's not the end of the world. I'll work really hard to get there, but in the grand scheme of things, the fact that I showed up every day to make music is really what matters.
Right. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. How was your week? What How's RPM going?
It's good. So my goal for this week was to finish writing the 4 songs I have in terms of the structure and the lyrics.
Yeah.
And I did that. So
Woohoo.
as of Thursday, I finished writing the lyrics for my 4th song.
Wow.
So they're all done. And so like if something happened and I couldn't work on RPM again for the rest of the month, I'm done. They don't sound great because I got to do retracking and stuff. I have like I put new strings on my guitar, so I'll be able to do some nice fresh tracking for the guitar parts. I want to retrack vocals. I had a really rough vocal week. Just my voice was just not there for me. So
I wonder if it's like because the temperature's dropped, right? Like, do you think that has anything to do with
I think that's exactly it. Yeah. I was wondering if part of it is definitely the weather. My voice is pretty temperamental. Like it doesn't like weather shifts that are really dramatic. And we've had some mild weather and
Very
then it plummeted.
Yes.
I remember I've been because I've been opening the door to the balcony to get fresh air when I'm doing my workout. And it's been really nice because it's been like hovering around 0 and sometimes a little higher. And so it's really nice.
It was 10 degrees at one point, which was unheard of for mid-February.
And then one day I didn't realize the temperature because at this point I'm not taking my dog out. So I'm not aware of what the temperature is. But I just assumed it was going to be another beautiful day. And so I opened the door and it was like this Arctic wind blew in. I was like, what is happening? I'm like, oh, of course, it's February in Canada. Oh, well.
Right.
So I was smacked in the face by this cold reality. But I think that is when my vocal problems started. I also was thinking that maybe it's because it became really dry. It's been pretty comfortable in terms of the humidity level, but it was probably around like 35%, a little bit lower even. And I think that was maybe also because my voice just felt raspy. It felt almost like it had holes in it. Like I know that's not the case, but that's how I describe my voice when it feels like there's something about it. It just doesn't feel right. It feels like the integrity of my voice is just not where it needs to be. It feels like, like it's had holes punched in it.
Yeah.
So I ended up using this humidifier I got from a friend who got it for Christmas and didn't need it. It's one of these like Cool Mist humidifiers, and I've had it in a box since December because it was like the humidity was fine, but I thought, oh, maybe I'll put that on and see if that helps. And I think it is helping. It's been a few days since I've had it running, and it's definitely making a difference. The humidity is now up around like between 45 and 50. So that's like,
okay. Yeah.
Really comfortable. And I feel like I tracked some vocals yesterday morning and my voice definitely felt better. When I went to edit those vocals, they did not sound great. They're still sounding pretty weak. But that also might be a product of just, I didn't do as much of my vocal exercises last week because I was trying to just like give my voice a bit of a rest too, aside from just like tracking scratch vocals for my songs once I finish the lyrics. But I'm hoping that this next week, having had a few days with the humidifier running and getting back into my, proper singing routine in the morning, I'm hoping that'll bring it back. So I can just, because I really love to get all of the final vocals tracked this week, tracked and edited and all of that, so that next week, so that not this upcoming week, but the week after my last week of RPM, I can just be doing the final finishing touches. I really would rather not have to do any tracking that week. Obviously, I can if I have to. Like that is a thing I have to do sometimes, is like tracking right up until the end. But I'd really like to get that off my plate because I find the most taxing is having to like do the takes and then do the editing and then go back if I've missed something. And I really would like to just be able to sit and polish up my songs and send them on their way. But I feel pretty confident.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been a very smooth process overall. Like it
has been, and I'm not sure if I should
really
be
nicely
concerned about.
Oh yeah. Like, that's the worst. When things are too easy. Yeah, exactly. Like, what am I missing? And then you realize you haven't actually been doing anything.
Yeah, well, and I keep having that feeling like, am I being too leisurely about my approach to this because I'm only doing 4 songs? And that might be the case, and I might be kicking myself over the next couple of weeks as I'm like, I still have so much to do. What was I thinking? Why did I spend so much time playing Baldur's Gate? What a waste. It was not a waste. It was still really fun. But I know I feel pretty good. Like when I look at the time I spent, that's the thing too, is like when I'm working on it, I'm really working on it. So
Yeah.
I very much am a quality over quantity kind of person. So, I on the weekends I'm not getting as much time just because I'm usually pretty busy with other things, but I'm still getting at least 2 hours on Saturday and on Sunday. And then the rest of the week I'm getting 4 to 5 hours. So that's a good chunk of time. And again, for the stuff I was doing before, where it was a lot of the actual pulling stuff out of my brain part of the process, I find that very draining.
Yeah.
Now that that's done, I feel like I can definitely do more. So on the days where I'm able to, I'm going to squeeze in probably an extra RPM block in like the early evenings just to get another hour or two, because that time does add up when I can squeeze that in. Yeah, and I think this is maybe the point where I'm going to have to like abandon some things. So the gaming might have to come to a complete stop, but we'll see. I'll have a better idea by the end of this week what the next 11 days will look like.
Right. Yeah, I can't believe that it's already like we're already at that. It's February 18th. Yeah.
I know. But to put it in perspective, February 18th of last year, I had just started writing the last song for my album. So
wow.
Again, that was because there was 7 songs and that particular song like was sampling the other 6 songs.
Yeah.
So it was what I needed to do to make that song. But I keep reminding myself, like I had way more to do last year and I got it done. So I feel like I'm going to be fine. I think I am maybe just overthinking it. Like I think I'm maybe a little scarred from last year. Like again, overall, it was a really amazing experience, but it was the most draining month of my life, I think, in terms of like doing work, not like dealing with personal stuff, but
yeah,
in terms of like just what I had to give to get that done. But I got a lot out of it, so it was definitely worth it. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll have a better idea. I'll do like some kind of an RPM postmortem and sort of reflect on how things went and why they maybe sort of question why they went the way they did.
I mean, it's possible that the reason it feels so smooth this time is because you had the experience of last year, So, when you're kind of like bracing yourself for a repeat of an experience, and then it's like, oh, it wasn't like that this time. So the contrast maybe is just making it seem like that much.
Maybe.
Smoother.
Yeah, you're probably right. I also have to wonder how much of that is just because my songwriting process has improved so much.
Oh yeah, that too. There's probably lots of different factors that come into play because you're working on less songs. Yeah, like you said, your songwriting would have improved, of course, over a year. Yeah, and your process to RPM would have improved too because you've done it. You've done a few of them, right? So you've probably like refined your process as well, which would help. So.
Yeah, I think working in blocks is really helpful, which is something I started during the 2022 RPM, like halfway through, and that made a really big difference. I think that's the only reason I was able to finish that one, because I did struggle for the first couple of weeks.
So how did you work before working in blocks?
It was a lot more fuzzy. I just kind of would just sit down and be like, okay, it's time to like songwrite. And so I was still like using a timer, but it wasn't like, okay, I have this time to this time that I'm going to be doing this. So there was a more of a sense of, well, I have like all day to work on this. So that also makes it easier for procrastination to click in and all of that. So yeah, doing the time blocking has really exponentially improved my process as far as anything music related goes, but especially I think the creative process. And it's kind of like we were talking about this before we recorded with like space, physical space. So when you have a really big space, you'll fill up that space with stuff. Whereas if you have a smaller space, then, you use the space you have, you use the time you have. So if I give myself a block of like 2 hours, that's the time I have. I got to make it work. Right. Yeah. Whereas I know when I have a day where it's like, I can work on this for like 4 or 5 hours, it takes that time. And you know what? I actually think that kind of got me this time because the songwriting, like the lyric writing process took kind of a long time. But I'm wondering if that's because I gave myself like a couple of, 1.5 to 2 hour chunks for each song. like on the same day, I often would do that. I would say, okay, today I'm working on this song. And I wonder if that kind of got me in trouble a little bit, because I would get the lyrics done within those 2 blocks. But what if I'd given myself just 1 block and then I'd move to another song for the next block? I feel like that's what I did last year.
Interesting. Yeah.
Is I had like 2 to 3 RPM blocks each day. And for each block, I did a different song. And like, even if I wanted to keep working on the song, I just moved to the next one, because I had so many to work on. I wanted to keep them all in rotation. But I think because I had fewer songs this year, I felt like I had more space, which I think there is something to be said for giving yourself that space when you're working on something. But I think maybe if I had given myself a smaller chunk of time, it might have helped to speed up my brain processing a little bit faster.
It's possible. Like, I'm thinking, like, for me, there's a few things that happen if I have too much time for a thing. First of all, I will procrastinate. It's, if I have all day to do the thing, then I'm not going to do the thing until I only have a couple hours left in the day to do the thing. So in which case, just say you have 2 hours in the day to do it, right? Like, then it'll force you to it quicker, I think. And also, when you say, like, you have a whole day to do a thing, I think that procrastination kicks in because it feels like in my mind, I kind of interpret like, oh, okay, it's going to take me all day to do the thing. And so then I don't want to do it. When in reality, it doesn't take that amount of time. Yeah. And I think with less time dedicated to a task, like you said, I do think there's something psychologically that happens where your brain doesn't overthink things the same way it would if you knew you had this block, but you also have the next block to work on the thing.
Yeah.
You're probably not as efficient because you don't need to be.
Yeah, I think especially because my first block comes before I have breakfast. And so there's that part of my brain that's also like, you're going to be eating soon. Like, it's almost time to eat. And I think sometimes that can sort of work against me, because I feel like I'm like, okay, it's okay. I'll probably, if I'm struggling now before I've eaten, maybe after, when I come back to it after I've eaten, like it'll come to me, which it does. But I'm curious about whether or not it would have taken less time if I was as disciplined about moving to the next song within each block. So what I actually would like to do is try that for next year, because I'm going to be doing the same number of songs using probably the same process. I'm actually going to try that and see if that helps, because I think because I kept thinking, like, how did I write lyrics for 7 songs last year? I mean, one of them doesn't have a lot. It only has like a few lines, but I mean, for the most part, the songs were all full songs. And I did that within those chunks. I'm like, I wonder if that's why the lyrics came as quickly as they did.
Right.
Or maybe I'm just not remembering and they took longer, and last year was such a fog that I just don't remember.
You've blocked it out of your mind.
Yeah, well, and it was funny as I was reading through my journal from not my journal, but like my RPM, the journal that I buy to write lyrics in, and all of that. Looking at my process for the songs, like, I don't remember doing any of this. This is actually why I like writing lyrics the way I do, where I don't get rid of any of them. I can trace it back to see how I got to an idea, and I'm like, I feel like I probably had to work just as hard on my lyrics last year, but I don't know. It was such a whirlwind. I feel like I blacked out at one point. Whereas I feel, and maybe that's also part of the dilemma I'm having this year, is like, I feel like I feel too good. I don't know that I'm supposed to feel this mellow or this normal, but I don't know.
I've had that experience before where it's like, I am obviously forgetting something major, because I feel my anxiety should be higher right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe all the work I've been doing to really like be more calm and more peaceful is just kicking in, or I don't know. Who knows?
Well, whatever it is, enjoy it, because it sounds like a good place to be in.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's probably a really healthy place to be creating from.
Mm-hmm.
And I am really happy that, the songs are done. And to the point where some of them I don't even really have to flesh out all that more. I don't think I'm going to have to do as much production-wise as I was thinking. I think for the songs that I wrote, I think a lot of them are going to do well being a little bit more sparse. So, yeah, I think maybe I should just enjoy the ride and not question it so much.
Yeah.
Just be glad, because, again, things could turn on a dime. All of a sudden, I could be pulling all-nighters, so we'll see. I won't know for sure until the very end. But anyways, right now I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm excited to delve into the topic of finding your artistic voice a little bit further.
Yeah, yes, because we ended last episode and you have some thoughts about cultivating your artistic voice and ways in which to do that, which I was so curious to hear, your approach to that. I have some ideas, but yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
So I've been thinking recently, like the last maybe month, because time has lost all sense, so I'm not sure.
Right.
It's pretty recent. But I've been playing with this idea of defining the different areas a musician would work on to develop as a musician. I think a lot of this can have some overlap with different arts, but I'll talk about it from a musician's perspective just because that's the world I know. And so I broke it down into 3 parts. Part 1 would be, or I guess they don't really need to be numbered. They're all important, but the first one is proficiency. The next would be musicianship. And then the last would be artistry. So I've been thinking in terms a lot of like how to develop each part, because if you look at like developing as a musician, there's so many things to work on. And I think it's helpful to be able to categorize what those fall under.
Right.
So like what category those would fall under, what specific area of one's musical development they are working on when they're working on something specific. So like proficiency would be, we'll use a guitarist as an example. So proficiency would be like a guitarist's ability to play the guitar. So all the things that are unique to that instrument, how well they're able to manipulate that instrument to bring forth whatever it is they're trying to play. So that'll be like technique, that'll be fretboard visualization, that'll be all of that stuff. Musicianship is anything that's applicable to any musician. So this would be like your time feel, your ear, your theoretical knowledge, like all of that stuff, all the stuff that is like applicable to all musicians. And then you have artistry, which is going to be the way that each musician funnels musical energy through them. How do they express musical energy? Because this is really what we're talking about when it comes to like an artistic fingerprint, a musical fingerprint. I think music all comes from the same place for every musician, but it's going to sound different. And so that's what I'm really interested in digging into. Like, what is it that we can do to really cultivate that musical voice, that musical fingerprint? And again, this part of it will be applicable, I think, to anybody who does art. And so one thing that has been really helpful for me is to explore a bunch of different musicians. So to look for the people who inspire you the most, and then to really like dig into them, but to not just have one. So this is really important because if you have like a favorite musician or a favorite artist and they really inspire you and you want to create art that's kind of like what they do, if you do too much in the way of trying to emulate somebody, you end up just sounding like a bad copy of that person, or you like your art is like a bad copy of that person. There's this quote from the guitarist Guthrie Govan, talking about all these guitarists who just like want to play like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Yeah. And they end up just sounding like a bad Stevie Ray Vaughan because nobody's going to sound like him. And Stevie Ray Vaughan sounds like a composite of all of his heroes. Like you can hear who influenced him when you listen to him, but it's his unique way of putting them together. And so that's what we want to try to accomplish, is to find like a handful of artists who inspire us and to kind of think about going wide in terms of exploring really wide, but then going deep with like just, again, just a handful. So find the artists or the musicians who inspire you the most and really go deep with them. So like I have, John Mayer was obviously my big one for a while, but now it's really built out for me. I have Jordan Rakai, who's been a huge influence, James Blake, Jamie Cullum. I have some guitar players I'm really into, Mark Lettieri and Tom Quayle, who are really inspiring how I'm playing guitar now. And all of that's being funneled through what I create. And you can hear that if you know what to listen for. Pink Floyd is a big one too. Pink Floyd is my favorite band for like many, many years. And I listened to them obsessively. David Gilmour is the one who got me into getting serious about lead guitar. And you can still hear that in some of what I do. There's still a little bit of that sensibility. And I went really deep with their stuff. So like all of these artists that I've mentioned, I've been going really deep into what they do and really like absorbing what it is they have to offer as artists. And then that's coming through in what I put together. But I'm not taking any one of them and just like trying to be a copy of that person, because then it ends up just being too much of like you end up feeling too much like a copycat.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring this up, because one of the notes that I had for myself is I have to be very careful with, because, you know, I'm on Instagram, I'm following a lot of different artists. And because I have such a wide taste in art, like I like a lot of different things. So I can get very easily distracted and kind of go down a road that isn't actually the road I want to be going down. I can chase that shiny new thing. So I have to be cautious with how much art I'm consuming, like how much art I'm looking at and what I'm looking at. And I do have to be a bit more intentional, which is kind of what you're saying. Like, you know, you choose a select few, the ones that really, really resonate with you at your core. And again, like not copying, but I think for visual artists, there is a stage in your development as an artist where it is really beneficial to copy as a way of learning. And so, like, I've done some paintings that are copies of Impressionists. And you can, as an artist, you can copy another artist's work, but you cannot sell it.
Nope.
And I wouldn't post it on social media because I think there's copyright infringement things there too. But in terms of just a sketchbook practice for yourself to help you develop, it is a good tool, and it becomes a launching pad. So, and I'm not there. I don't think I'm quite there yet. I think right now with my representational stuff anyways, I haven't quite developed my own unique style yet. I'm getting there. It is a slow progress. With my abstract stuff, I don't even know what that is. That's my own thing. That is me, and that is coming from myself completely. Like, it's not influenced. I mean, it is, because everything is influenced by what you see around you. But yeah, like bringing that intention to the art you're looking at. And like, I think you do this where you set time aside to actually do that kind of like exploration or whatever is important to put boundaries around it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you're exactly right on the copying front. I mean, how many years did I spend covering John Mayer songs? Like,
yeah,
that's why he's in my DNA, and like learning David Gilmour solos, and like, and that is definitely like for musicians, you know, definitely spend that time copying them. It definitely is an exercise for sure. But, you know, and I wouldn't be too afraid for musicians to like try to write something in somebody else's style, because you can't help but still sound like yourself. You're never.
That's right.
You sound like yourself this is a John Mayer quote. Like, you sound like yourself when you fail to sound like your heroes. Like, you are always still gonna sound like you doing that thing. But, you know, if you keep going in that direction where you're just following one person, at some point, like, it's just going to get very tired very quickly. So you want to make sure you're copying somebody, spending some time with somebody else, copying them, and, you know, and then again, yeah, definitely finding your crew, and then exploring. And like, I definitely had that experience where I was chasing like the shiny thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of guitar players probably get that, because you see somebody do something really cool and you're like, ooh, like, I want to do that. Like, I want to do that. Like, the whole reason I got an Ovation acoustic guitar is because I was really into Khaki King. I'm still into her stuff, but I was playing a bunch of her stuff, which she does like acoustic figure style,
right,
instrumental stuff, and it's really great, but it's definitely not something that I've like incorporated into my style. It was something I explored for a little while that was really fun, but now I sort of have gone off in a different direction. And I think there is something to be said for exploring when you feel called to try something, especially when you're just starting out, when you feel called to try something, just to try it and just to see, because that is also going to let you know who you are and who you aren't.
I think there's absolutely value there, actually. And I'm thinking, like, with my daily paintings right now, I've done a string of them over the past few days that are very like geometrically abstract, which is so far outside of things I've done before. Like, usually any kind of abstract, it's still, you can kind of still see a landscape in it, but these are just, it's pure abstraction. But what's interesting, and it's interesting because yesterday I was looking at them and thinking, I wonder how this will influence my other work. Like, I wonder how this is, because obviously there's something in my brain that's wanting to do this for some reason that I'm not aware of. But it'll be interesting to see my work in another like 6 months and like have those somehow come in a way that I wasn't expecting. So for sure, like getting distracted by the shiny new thing isn't a bad thing. And I think that should be, you should follow that, but pull back. I made the mistake of following the shiny new thing and thinking that was my new thing.
Oh, and I see what you mean. Yeah.
And that's where, and then I get carried away and I come up with, because I'm great at coming up with ideas or dreaming big. So then it's like, oh, this is my new thing. And then all of a sudden I start dreaming up all these things I can do with this new style and like product, like cards that I can make or whatever, instead of taking it for what it was, which was ultimately kind of like a moment in time. So, and I think for some people, like the clarity comes easier than others, like, or your sense of direction comes easier. Like for me, I don't have a very strong sense of direction in terms of what I want to do with my work. So that is a struggle, because it means I need to like keep myself in check.
Yeah. I would say also don't worry about it. I think you'll find your way, because I found my way through that without really doing anything intentionally. Now I'm much more intentional about it, just because I have the perspective of knowing where I'm headed. And so it makes it easier for me now to have boundaries around the things I explore. A lot of that's also just a limitation of time, sort of like having that reckoning with my mortality and going, I just cannot do everything. So what really lights me up?
That helps. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's again, thinking wide, like it's explore wide and then follow the things that interest you, but come back to the depth of like your core things. And sometimes, like for me, like James Blake is kind of a new one. I got into his music at the end of 2021, but he was just one of those ones that really clicked for me, that there was something in his music that I wanted to take some of that and incorporate it. And I'm still really, I feel like the beginning of that journey with his artistry, getting to know his music and his sound, and so I keep wanting to come back to him because I feel like there's so much to explore. And, I'm pretty happy with like the crew I have right now of like who feel like my main influences. They all feel like they're different enough that they keep me interested and also keep my sound a little bit more diverse than it would be if I was kind of picking from the same pond, although that's fine too. So if you have somebody who's like a blues guitarist predominantly, they're going to be drawing from the pool of like blues guitarists, although generally you're also influenced by like all sorts of other other people, other genres. But if you're within a particular realm, I think it's fine to like stay within that world. You can still find a lot of diversity when you're within a genre. But for me, I like to explore like a bunch of different genres, just because there are several that I feel I really resonate with and that I can bring together into whatever, my sound is.
Well, and it's interesting too, because there's probably a phase in your development as well where it's like, okay, like if you want to be a landscape painter, for instance, you draw inspiration from other landscape painters that are painting similar to what you kind of aspire to. But as you develop your skill, it might be that you start looking and getting inspired by things that are way out there, like pure abstraction or whatever. And then you're starting to kind of, because as you gain that creative confidence or that confidence in your skill and your ability, you might start looking outside of that kind of narrow window and pulling in things that seem like they wouldn't even fit together. But you have the confidence to be able to make it fit together, which is kind of like what you've been doing. Like you've been mixing like electronic type music with like guitar type stuff, right? Am I saying that right? That's right, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Yeah, and those are all like coming from different places, but I'm finding a way to pull them together. And I think that's ultimately what gives each person something unique, is when you have these different sources of inspiration and then you're able to pull those together. But definitely that took time. And so, again, to reflect on the beginning of my songwriting journey, I was writing like I wanted to be John Mayer. Like, again, John Mayer never made me want to be like him so much as he made me want to find my own voice, because he had such a distinctive voice. But he was such a big influence on me, and I love his music so much that when I started songwriting, he is who I turned to as like the example of what a peak songwriter is. Like, that to me was like my my inspiration, and that's where I got my start. But I also had all these other influences, and I think playing with my band as well and writing songs for my band was really helpful, because that was pulling from a little bit more of my influences that came from like the classic rock world and all of that, because we were like a rock trio. So
right.
I think that was really helpful to have these like two avenues. So like the stuff I wrote for myself was much more acoustic singer-songwriter, and then the stuff I wrote for my band was like more rock. So I think that was really helpful too. I hadn't really thought of that before, but I think that was an important part of my development and how I'm kind of bringing those together in a way, because I write music that could be played by a full band, and I eventually probably will put my own band together to play the stuff live.
I can play the triangle. It's part of the band.
I'm gonna have to add some triangle to my. I don't know if I have any triangle in any of my songs, but I can add some triangle, and you can get a triangle solo. What we have to do is set you up with like, we'll hook you up to a microphone, and we're gonna give you like a really intense pedal board. So it's just gonna be like the craziest sounding triangle. You're gonna do one of those triangle hits, and there's gonna be so much just crazy sound coming through. We're gonna just set you up with all these crazy pedals. It's gonna sound like
I love that.
Chaos.
Just like this simple gesture, but it like launches this whole like musical experience.
Yeah. I've always
wanted to be part of a band, but I'm like, I don't play any instruments, so that kind of creates challenges.
You do play some. I know you play a little piano. You do play some guitar. You have a ukulele.
Oh yeah, I mean, I play like 3 chords. I can dabble, but I'm not at a point where I would ever play in a band. But I can offer my personality. That could be something. I'd be a mascot.
Yeah, do bands have mascots?
I don't know. They have groupies, don't they? Or roadies?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, but I feel like you're too interesting to be a groupie. I think that the avatar of a groupie is that they're pretty mindless, right? Isn't that like the stereotype of like somebody who's just a groupie, is that they just want to mindlessly follow around an artist or a band or something? But I feel like you would have too much to offer to be a groupie.
I feel like are we running the risk of offending a bunch of people right now? Nah, no one's listening.
In another couple of years, maybe we would offend some people. No offense to anybody here who identifies as a groupie, but I'm speaking more to like the stereotype. I mean, anybody who's like into a band, obviously, I know what that's like. That's, but the idea of like, you know, the quintessential rock star who has like his groupies, and they're all these like vapid, mindless women. You know, that's what I was thinking of in terms of that's what the term groupie makes me think of.
I think you're right. I think that's my stereotype.
There's a difference between a groupie and a fan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
sorry, a little bit of a detour there.
It's going to happen a lot. So the other thing too is that it's really important to create a lot. So if you're wanting to find your voice, you know, at some point you are just going to have to start making art or music or whatever it is. And it's going to be tough in the beginning, and that's okay. Like you have to just make something. Just do it. Just the first song or the first painting or the first whatever, that's the hardest, because you're not sure if you can do it. And then once you do it, then you're okay to keep going. And once you realize too that you don't have to put all this pressure on your first work, it's going to keep getting better. You just have to keep churning them out. Just get something done so that you can move on to the next thing, because each thing you do is going to help you evolve your voice. So don't wait. This is I think an idea from Austin Kleon, you know, to not wait for your voice, or not wait to know who you are before you start working. Like doing the work is how you figure out who you are. So going through the process of creating songs or creating something, that's going to be how you figure it out, which goes hand in hand also with embracing your limitations. Like don't let your limitations hold you back in terms of what you know currently, in terms of the gear you have, in terms of any of that. You just have to like take what you have and just get started making something. Yeah.
And for those who are painting, or, you know, that might mean that your art, depending on where you are in, you know, how experienced you are with painting, it might mean that your stuff looks like garbage. It likely will look like garbage at the beginning. So that's where you have to lean into, it's not about the end result. It's about the process. It's the showing up, right? That's the part that's important. It's not what your work looks like or what your song sounds like isn't as important as you having just shown up to do that thing.
Yeah, and
which
I know
I'm just learning now, actually.
Yeah.
So
and it took me a long time to get there too, because I was very much, as we talked about in our perfectionism episode, I'm very much a perfectionist, and I wanted everything I produced to be perfect because my self-esteem was riding on it. So once I was able to untangle myself from that kind of mindset and just realize that creating something that isn't up to my standards is not the end of the world, it is just a stepping stone to closing that gap. Which is an important thing as well, is as you're trying to develop artistry, you want to develop your taste. And that's where listening to or looking at different art or listening to musicians is going to come into play. As you're listening and refining your taste, it helps you to improve your standards. But there is that gap then where what you're creating does not meet your standards. And that's okay. That's how you get there. That's the thing that is going to get you to where you're then producing work you're really happy with, is that you have to produce a lot of work that doesn't sound the way you want it to, that doesn't feel right, that, you know, but if you can still find, like, exactly like you said, the satisfaction in the process, but also the satisfaction in just having something that you created. How many people talk themselves out of just creating something because it's not going to be good enough or whatever, and they miss out on the experience of having an idea and then seeing it come into the world in whatever way, shape, or form that is for your artistic medium. That's like a thrilling experience.
Yeah.
To have, like,
I need to talk to those.
I have a painting, you know?
Yeah. I need to talk to those people. Sorry, I cut you off a million times. I need to talk to those people, because those are the people I want to be like, no, do it. Don't talk yourself out of doing this thing. It's not as scary as you think it is. And the stakes, it doesn't matter if what you create is garbage, but it does matter if you don't bother doing it.
Yeah. You know? You're not going to get better if you're not doing it, doing the work of creating.
Yeah. And just circling back to what you're saying too, between the you know, you do that thing and it's like, there's like a gap between your ability and what you strive to be or what you strive to create or whatever. That's a good sign. Like, if what you're doing, you're not 100% happy with, there's still room for improvement. That's a good sign, because it means that you have integrity. It means that you are, and like you said, like, there needs to be that gap in order for you to be motivated to grow and learn more. Otherwise, if you're at a point where you're 100% happy with the things you're putting out, I actually wonder, like, would there be drive to create anymore?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I think part of why it's exciting for me is that I keep hearing my music get better and better.
You want it,
even as it gets better, I know it can be even better than it is now, and I can push myself more, and that's what I'm always wanting to do. You know, enjoy the process, enjoy writing a song, but also within that time, push myself. Like, how can I make this better? And especially, this is actually, I think, also important. Although this is not something I thought about before as far as artistry goes, but getting feedback helps you also then refine your artistry and refine your voice. Yeah. Because sometimes having an objective person's perspective can help reveal things about your artistry that you weren't aware of. They can either point out areas where you're strong that you hadn't even noticed because you take them for granted. It's just the stuff that comes naturally to you. Yeah. And they'll point out areas where you're weaker, which is good to know, because that could, sometimes it's a sign of a limitation that you can just embrace and it becomes part of your sound or your visual repertoire, or it's something that you can work on and it'll help you close that gap. Because I think that's an important part of, and maybe this would be even like another portion of like your artistic voice, is refining it. So you define it, you cultivate it, and then you refine it. And that's where like feedback is very, very important.
And we can sometimes with things, especially in areas where you're struggling, there's a thing that my brain does anyways, where I know subconsciously, like deep down, I know that I need to work on this particular skill or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it seems so daunting, I don't want to do it. And so I kind of conveniently forget that that's the thing I need to work on, you know, and you kind of limp along without having that skill fully developed. And getting that feedback sometimes, you know, when someone else says, you know, you really should work on like your color, for instance, or whatever, I'm just throwing that out there. It kind of, it can kind of push you to take action on something that really you knew you needed to take action on, but you just didn't want to. But having that other person say, no, I'm noticing that, you're like, okay, I can't get away with this then. So that can kind of be helpful too, is that kick in the butt that some people need, like me. Develop.
Same. And that's actually why I wanted to bring up the fact that I've been thinking about like the proficiency and musicianship aspects of musical development, because I think they all go hand in hand. I think an important part of developing your artistry is developing your skill set to be able to execute the things that you're imagining in your head. Because that's a very frustrating place to be, is when you hear something or you see something, but you don't have the skills to execute that thing.
Yeah.
And that's where you want to make sure you're not neglecting just doing the work of improving the foundational things you need to do. So if you're a guitar player and you're writing guitar music, but your technique's not good, and so what you're playing doesn't sound good, that's going to be part of the problem. It doesn't matter how great the music is you hear in your head. If your technique isn't up to the challenge, you're always going to be dissatisfied with what you're doing. And that shouldn't stop you from creating right now with whatever technique you have, but it should be something that is developing alongside your artistry. So like all the work that I've done to work on my technique and to work on my musicianship, that comes through in my artistry, in how I'm able to express myself with more confidence, with more accuracy even, just having a better ear for the details and for what I'm trying to accomplish. And I'm still very much at a point where I want to do something with a song and I don't know where to go. And that's that signal, like, okay, these are the things I have to work on and explore. And even just over the last couple of weeks, getting feedback on the songs I've been working on, it was exactly like you said, like it was revealing parts that I knew I was going to need to work on. And now it's kind of just helped to push it to the forefront of my mind. Like, okay, when I'm sitting down to work on my production technique, these are the areas I have to focus on. I need to work on my vocal production. I need to work on my drum production and all like these things that I know are weak in what I'm doing. And improving those is going to help me further refine my artistry. Because at this point, I do feel like I know what my artistic voice is. I feel comfortable in it. Now it's just trying to continually elevate it and sort of measure up to my personal values or my musical values, so that I'm always reaching for a higher standard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I actually think that kind of sums it up. That sort of clarifies my approach anyways.
Yeah.
Or at least how it stands right now, or what and this is just really based on what I've done, and I'm sort of retracing my steps and then talking about what I'm still doing now. So just as a recap, listen wide, or again, I'm going to use music terminology, but this is applicable to all art. But, you listen wide, explore, but then find your core group to go really deep on. Then the next step is to really just create as much as possible and to embrace your limitations. So don't let your limitations stop you. Definitely work on any limitations you have, but don't let a limitation stop you from just creating with what you have now, because creativity is a muscle that needs to be exercised. So if you're constantly waiting until you have this piece of gear, or you're in this sort of space, or whatever the excuse is, just work around it. Just do what you can now, because then as you start to upgrade, as you improve your technique and your musicianship, as you improve the quality of the gear you used or the software you use, you'll actually be able to use that stuff and appreciate it, because you've done all the legwork of creating music or creating art or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. Did you have
show
any?
Up.
Show up. Focus on the process always.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I took notes for this, it's comforting to me, because the notes that I took for this episode, it all aligns with everything that you mentioned. So that's cool. I'm like, oh, I'm doing the right things.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, and again, some of this thinking is still new in terms of like proficiency, musicianship, artistry, but I feel like that's really, for artistry, that's like those are the three kind of cornerstones. And then again, we could sort of talk about refining your artistry would involve like feedback, involve getting stuff done, all of that. But a lot of that goes hand in hand. That sort of feeds back in. So at some point, I'll probably be clarifying these ideas more. I think they're going to end up in the book I'd like to write one day, but or in a book. Maybe I'll have to write more than one book.
I think what you said about embrace your limitations is really important, because I think what can happen is some people stay in that kind of learner mode for too long, where they don't start to create their own stuff because they don't know it all yet. And
I was guilty of that.
Yeah, and that can be that's not something that resonates with me. I'm on the other side of that, where I actually probably don't invest as much as I should into the learning side of things.
Right.
And I just launch into the doing. But yeah, that's another thing to keep in mind, is you don't need to know everything in order to create. You can create with limitations, and that's fine. And then just be mindful of what your limitations are, and then work on them if that makes sense. Yeah,
because some limitations you can overcome and some you can't. Like,
yeah.
My voice is a good example. My voice is what it is. Of course, it's gotten a lot better, and I work on my singing a lot, but there is a limitation, like a physical limitation to how I'm going to be able to sing. I'm never going to sound like Whitney Houston. I mean, fortunately, she's not one of my core people, so it's not a huge deal. I tend to be able to very comfortably match the artist I'm into, but it's definitely something that I have to accept. I mean, that fortunately for me has not been really a big issue, but for a lot of people, I think they struggle when they feel like, oh, I can't ever sing like so-and-so, or I can't ever do this like so-and-so. It's like, no, of course you can't. Nobody else can. So if you can find the things that make you uniquely you and embrace them and really, do the best you can with what you have, you're going to be able to create something that nobody else can create. And people will be saying that to you, like, oh, I'll never be able to create music like this person. And it's like, yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, I would sort of add a little like teacher disclaimer, just because, I know I can almost imagine I have, students who are like, oh yeah, this means I don't have to like work on this thing I'm bad at. No, you still have to practice your F chord. You still have to work on your bar chords. You still have to work on your timing. There are limitations that are a byproduct of just needing more experience, more practice. And those things should be worked on, because they will make your work suffer if your technique is bad. Again, my voice, I work a lot on my technique. So there's an acceptance of the limitation of what I'm physically able to do as a singer, but I work really hard to make my voice sound as good as I can possibly make it sound. And I'm still working on that all the time. The same with my guitar playing. There's going to be a limitation to just the ways I can play it, just physically, because my fingers are small. I know I have to like adapt things as I learn certain songs. That's fine. I do them the best I can, and I work on them. So, that I feel like that's a whole topic for another day. But I just wanted to put that out there in the event that I have any current or future students listening who are like, oh yeah, I can't play an F chord. That's my limitation. I'm going to embrace it. No, you still have to practice.
The F chord.
Yeah, everybody's least favorite chord when they're starting. Although I don't remember having a problem with it. I don't know. But again, I don't remember a lot about my beginning guitar journey. I just remember how excited I was to play guitar.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I feel like I probably did struggle with that chord. I just don't remember. Anyways, I digress. I think that's good. I feel like I said everything I wanted to say. And again, we can always revisit this topic at a later date.
Yeah.
So let's look at the week ahead. What do you have going on? I guess you're starting your 100-day challenge. Is that starting today?
Yeah, that's starting today, and then got to continue working on those commissions, because I've put a deadline of mid-March. They're not in any rush. They're like, oh, whenever. I'm like, oh, don't leave it open-ended for me, or else it'll never happen, right? So I set my own deadline, which is very nice, actually. But time moves quick. And one thing I've noticed since starting that, like implementing a routine for myself, is that the days go by even faster.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, ooh, like I've really got to get on this and get moving on these things. So I'll spend some time this week doing that, and then the 100-day challenge. And other than that, it'll be the same stuff I've been doing. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, our RPM
Right.
week 3. I'm just really going to focus on, I think I'm going to experiment with that, doing alternating blocks. So I'm going to do 2 to 3 blocks. I have a couple of days this week. I think I can squeeze in 3. 2 to 3 blocks each day, 1.5 to 2 hours each.
Yeah.
And I'm going to switch songs.
Yeah.
So that
nice.
I'm not running into the problem where, you know, a couple of the songs are really well developed and really well polished, and then the rest are not. So some like one of the songs in particular, I think is going to just need more work than the others, but that's the kind of thing I'll address like next week. I think for this upcoming week, I want to make sure they're all feeling pretty balanced. So I'm going to be retracking vocals. I'm going to be retracking some of the guitars now that I have new strings on one of my guitars. Actually, I still have to put new strings on a couple of them, but at least my main guitar has new strings, so I can do that. Yeah, and then I'm just gonna work on, you know, adding what needs to be added. I have some like vocal overdubs I want to do, and like some background vocals and stuff, and probably add some extra little guitar things, and yeah, just see how it goes, and sort of keep an eye on how I'm feeling as well this week.
Yeah.
See if I sort of keep feeling pretty calm, or if I start to have a freak out, because what's going to happen is I'm going to get to like Saturday and realize this is my last Saturday of RPM. And normally Saturday, a very relaxing day, might be very stressful as I'm like cramming to get stuff done. But again, that time will tell. It'll depend on how this next week goes. I'm really hoping my voice holds up.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll fingers crossed. I'm hoping that that I'll be able to get that done. But yeah, that's it. RPM, week 3.
Yeah. Woohoo. All
right, cool. Well, thank you everyone for listening. You can send questions and comments to our email at streamofartpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram. We are at streamofartpodcast. You are welcome to join our Discord as well. The link will be in the show notes. We do little episode. We have a little episode discussion channel. So each week when the episode goes up, you'll have an opportunity to talk about, you know, things you learned, or share ideas, or, you know, how to start a discussion with your fellow creatives about what we discussed. And yeah, I think that's it. I'm really tired all of a sudden.
I'm really hungry.
I think maybe RPM is catching up to me a little bit.
Well, my stomach has been making noises. I'm like, I wonder if you'll pick that up on the mic. There might be some gurgles.
Oh, maybe. I'll just be able to use a plugin to probably take that out. So
get rid of the stomach gurgles?
Yeah, or I'll just amplify them and it'll sound like
I think that would be better.
We have a monster in the background.
Yeah. Little gremlin. Podcast gremlin.
Yeah, oh, that's kind of nice.
That could be our mascot.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, so have a great week, everyone, and we will see you in the next episode.
See you later. Bye.